The day Ashibi first stepped into Chief Oladapo's mansion, the weight of her father's grave seemed to press against her chest. She had rehearsed her role 1,000 times, the quiet maid, faceless and harmless. Yet nothing could have prepared her for the jolt that struck her the moment she saw Lucas, the chief's only son. He wasn't the weakling she had pictured from the rumors. Broad-shouldered, tall. His movements calm like he owned the air itself. A plain white shirt clung to his frame, revealing muscles carved from discipline, not vanity. When he walked past her in the hallway, she caught his scent, cedar, smoke, and something faintly citrus, and her knees nearly betrayed her. Heat flooded her, and she turned away so quickly the tray of glasses in her hands rattled. At home that night she confessed nothing of him to her mother. Instead she spoke of quitting. "Mama, I cannot stay there. The house feels cursed. My spirit does not agree with it." Her mother's eyes, sharp with grief and rage, bored into hers. "You think your father's ghost agrees with you running? You think revenge is easy? Do you not remember how he died? Empty, sick, because that man refused to pay him his due. We are nothing today because of that family. And you want to walk away." Ashibi's lips trembled, but she said nothing. She remembered her father's weak cough, her mother's wails. She remembered the smell of poverty that followed them after the chief discarded him like a worn-out rag. Her mother pressed on. "Be strong. Go back. You will not fail me. You will not fail your father." So Ashibi returned the next morning. Her resolve hardened into something colder. Yet as she dusted the shelves and arranged the tableware, the memory of Lucas's scent lingered on her skin, mocking her mission. And in the quiet corners of that mansion, Ashibi whispered to herself, "How can I destroy a man I'm already struggling not to desire?" The mansion was a world of polished marble and silent echoes, yet Ashibi felt every wall watching her. She moved like smoke, carrying trays, sweeping corners, memorizing the rhythms of the household. The chief barked orders like a man who had never known hunger, his voice shaking even the chandeliers. The other staff scurried about, eyes lowered, always cautious. But Lucas, he was different. He rose late, padded through the house with a book in his hand, his silence almost defiant. People whispered about him, cruelly and without fear. Impotent, broken, a waste of a fine man. They said doctors abroad had poked and prodded him, and no one could make his manhood rise again. Ashibi had heard it before, and yet watching him now, it was hard to believe such rumors could belong to the man whose presence filled a room like sunlight. Each night when she returned home, her mother sharpened her reminders. Don't let his face or his silence deceive you. Lucas is his father's son. Cold blood runs in their veins. Remember what we lost. Remember your father coughing blood because he had nothing left. We did not send you there to admire their walls. You are there to end them. The words bit deep, steadying Ashibi's heart. So she began her work, not with knives or poison, but with subtler weapons. She chose her clothes carefully, letting a neckline dip, a hem lift. She let her laughter linger in the air when Lucas passed, a melody designed to catch the corner of his ear. She brushed his arm in the hallway, let her eyes meet his longer than necessary. But Lucas never lingered. He looked away as though her beauty were a mirror he did not dare face. There was no hunger in his eyes, only an emptiness that unsettled her more than desire ever could. It was as if he had trained himself to live without fire. That night, lying in her bed, Ashibi turned restless. Hatred should have anchored her, but it was slipping, replaced by questions she had no right to ask. Could a wound so deep ever be healed? Could a man who seemed untouchable still burn if the right flame touched him? She told herself she didn't care. Yet as she closed her eyes, she saw him again, not the broken son of a wicked chief, but a man who stirred something in her she had sworn to bury. Days turned into weeks, and Ashibi perfected her act. She was the invisible maid when the chief barked, yet a living flame whenever Lucas was near. Her hands lingered longer when she served him tea, her gaze daring him to look back. She wore silk scarves that brushed against her collarbone, skirts that swayed just a little more than necessary. The change was subtle, but she noticed it. Lucas, who once moved through the house as if untouched by the world, now shifted uncomfortably when she entered a room. His fingers tightened on the rim of his glass whenever her hand grazed his. He blinked too often when she stood close. And once, in the library, as she placed a book on the shelf, their arms brushed. The contact was fleeting, innocent to any other eye. But Ashibi felt it, the quickening in his body, the tremor in his breath. Lucas began disappearing more often, retreating to his room like a man haunted. Behind his locked door, he pressed his hands against the sheets, bewildered by the stirring heat beneath his waist. His body, long silenced, now betrayed him with whispers of life. It was terrifying. It was intoxicating. And every time he thought of her, her smile, her scent, the gleam of defiance in her eyes, the whispers grew louder. Ashibi noticed his retreat and smiled inwardly. So he is not made of stone after all. But the victory she expected tasted bitter. Each small triumph pulled her deeper into a trap of her own making. She had sworn to seduce and destroy, but now her heart pounded whenever his gaze lingered, even for a second. Late one night, she sat by her window, staring at the dark sky. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Do it for your father. Break them." But another voice, softer and dangerous, whispered within, "What if he is not the enemy? What if he is the cure neither of you expected?" The thought frightened her more than her mission. Because it was no longer just Lucas she was awakening. It was herself. The afternoon sun glistened against the mansion's pool, scattering light across the water like diamonds. Lucas sat at the edge, shirt open, a book forgotten on his lap. His face was calm, but there was a tension in his jaw, as though he fought battles no one else could see. Ashibi approached with a tray of chilled drinks, her every step deliberate. The silk of her gown clung to her curves, catching the sunlight, and she let her hips sway slightly as she neared. When she bent to hand him a glass, her fingers brushed his. Just a small contact, but long enough for a spark to shoot through them both. Lucas stiffened, his breath catching. His heart pounded like a drum he couldn't control. For the first time in years, something stirred beneath his waist. Faint but undeniable. His mind reeled, panic rushing in. Could it be real? Or was it a cruel trick his body played? He pulled back too quickly, almost spilling the drink, eyes darting anywhere but her face. Ashibi saw it, the flicker of heat, the flash of terror. She held back a smile, masking it with a soft, "Careful, sir." Her voice wrapped around him like silk, low and teasing. Lucas muttered thanks and excused himself, standing abruptly. He left the poolside, retreating indoors with long strides, the book clutched like a shield. Moments later, behind his locked bedroom door, he pressed his back against the wall, chest heaving. His palms trembled as he touched himself, as if confirming what had just happened. The truth was undeniable. A fire had been reignited, and the match had been Ashibi. She lingered by the pool, staring at the rippling water. Triumph fluttered in her chest. Her plan was working. And yet, beneath the victory, a dangerous thrill coiled in her stomach. For the first time since she entered that mansion, she realized she wasn't just playing a role. She was losing herself in it. And Lucas. He had tasted the possibility of life again. And once a dead man feels resurrection, he cannot forget. After that afternoon by the pool, nothing remained the same. Lucas avoided Ashibi with a desperation that made the walls of the mansion hum with tension. Yet the harder he ran, the closer fate seemed to push them together. It began with stolen glances in the dining room. Ashibi would lean across the table to adjust cutlery, her perfume teasing the air, and Lucas would grip his glass so tightly his knuckles whitened. Then came the late evenings, when the house grew silent and shadows stretched long across the halls. She would pass him in a corridor, their shoulders brushing, her soft good night, dripping with meanings neither dared to voice. One night, he found her folding laundry in the servants' quarters. The air was thick with the smell of soap and lavender. She looked up, startled, but her lips curved into a knowing smile. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Neither should you," he replied, though his voice shook. Something shifted between them in that moment. He stepped closer, unable to stop himself, until he could see the fine sheen of sweat on her collarbone, the quiver of her lashes as she tried to appear unmoved. Ashibi's heart pounded. This was supposed to be her trap, her mother's vengeance. Yet here she was, trembling under his gaze like a girl touched by first love. The first kiss came in that narrow passage behind the linen closet. It was clumsy, desperate, almost painful, but it ignited a fire in both of them that neither could quench. Lucas's lips tasted of restraint, of years of silence breaking in one rush. Ashibi melted against him, her body betraying every oath she had made. From that night on, their meetings became a dangerous rhythm. Behind kitchen doors, in the hidden corners of the garden, even in the silence of her small room, they stole hours that turned into lifetimes. His hands learned her curves, his voice deepened with desire, and for the first time in years his body rose with urgency. But with every secret embrace, Ashibi felt her vengeance slipping like sand through her fingers. The line between weapon and woman blurred, and she asked herself in the quiet after their passion, "Am I still his destruction, or have I become his salvation?" Ashibi lived two lives under one roof. By day, she was the dutiful maid, washing dishes, polishing marble floors, humming to herself like nothing weighed on her shoulders. By night, she became Lucas's secret flame, tangled in hurried embraces and whispered gasps in corners where no eyes could see. He touched her as though she were the only thing that tethered him to the world, and every time his body rose for her, his disbelief melted into gratitude. But while his hands were busy rediscovering life, hers were busy collecting secrets. She watched Chief Oladapo more closely than ever. The late-night phone calls, the documents carried into his study, the envelopes exchanged with shadowy men at the gate. Each detail she tucked away like ammunition. She began slipping anonymous notes to the authorities, feeding them pieces of his empire. Her heart burned with purpose, even as her body betrayed her in Lucas's arms. Yet something dangerous was happening. Lucas, once cautious, grew reckless. He no longer cared if the staff whispered. He wanted her in the laundry room, in the kitchen, against the cool walls of the corridor. His hunger consumed him, and Ashibi felt herself drowning between the sweetness of his passion and the bitterness of her mission. One evening, after a wild party thrown in the mansion, Lucas stumbled into her room drunk, collapsing on her bed with laughter. He clutched her waist, murmuring, "You're the only thing real, Ashibi. Without you, I'd still be a corpse." His words stung. How could she destroy the very man who now clung to her as though she was his lifeline? But her mother's voice haunted her, sharper than his whispers. "Don't forget your father's cough, the hunger in our stomachs, the shame we carry." So the next morning, Ashibi went into town and bought a small vial. A pill, tasteless, colorless, capable of silencing the very power she had awoken in Lucas. If she could not let herself destroy him with cold distance, she would cripple the fire that made him feel alive again. That night, as Lucas laughed and drank with friends, Ashibi's smile masked her storm. She had given him life, and now she planned to take it back. Dawn crept slowly over the mansion, painting the walls in pale gold. But peace was shattered when police cars rolled through the iron gates, their sirens slicing through the morning air. Staff scattered in panic as officers stormed inside. Chief Oladapo, dressed in his silk robe, tried to bluster, but the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists with a finality that silenced even him. His empire, built on greed and cruelty, crumbled in a single morning. From the kitchen window, Ashibi watched with her heart hammering. She had done it. Her father's ghost could finally rest. Her mother's vengeance was complete. Yet as the chaos swirled outside, another storm brewed in the quiet hallways of the mansion. Lucas woke late, head pounding from the party's excess. His throat was dry, his body sluggish. Ashibi entered his room with a glass of water, her face calm, her voice gentle. Drink, it will help. He trusted her without question, swallowing every drop. She smiled faintly as she took the empty glass away, knowing the pill was already at work. Hours later, as the noise of his father's arrest faded, Lucas sought her out. He found her in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, humming softly as she scrubbed a pan. Something about her calm after the storm pulled him in. He stepped closer, slipped his arms around her waist, and pressed his lips to her neck. Desire, raw and impatient, surged through him, until it didn't. He froze. His body, once awakened by her, now betrayed him again. Panic shot through his chest as he tried, willed, begged himself to respond. Nothing. The fire she had lit was gone. Ashibi. His voice cracked, broken with confusion. What's happening to me? She turned to face him, her eyes gleaming with a mix of triumph and sorrow. Her laughter was low, chilling, cutting through the kitchen like a blade. What's happening? You're returning to what you were meant to be. Broken. Helpless. Just like my father, because of yours. His breath hitched, horror dawning in his eyes. You did this. She leaned closer, her smile sharp. Yes. Every kiss, every touch, every secret. All of it led here. I gave you back what you thought you'd lost. Only to remind you it was never truly yours. Then she stepped back, leaving him crumbling on the tiled floor, the weight of betrayal heavier than the handcuffs that had dragged his father away. The mansion that once glittered with arrogance now stood in silence, its marble floors echoing with emptiness. Chief Oladapo's empire had been stripped away overnight. His accounts frozen, his name plastered across newspapers as a fraud and thief. Neighbors who once bowed in fear now whispered with scorn. The great lion had fallen. But it was not the chief's downfall that haunted the house. It was Lucas. He remained in his room for days, curtains drawn, his laughter gone. The servants whispered of his decline, of the way he stared at his own reflection as though searching for the man he had briefly become. The man Ashibi had awakened, and then shattered. Ashibi stood outside the gates, a small bag in her hand. Her mother's words echoed, "We did it. Your father's soul can rest." And yes, vengeance was hers. She had brought the mighty to their knees. But as she walked away, each step heavy, she felt no victory in her chest. Instead, she carried an ache that no triumph could soothe. She remembered Lucas's touch. Tentative, desperate, grateful. She remembered the way his lips trembled against hers as if she was his first breath after drowning. And she remembered the look in his eyes when he realized she had been the architect of his ruin. That look would haunt her longer than the memory of her father's cough. At the bus stop, Ashibi paused, watching the city churn with life. She was free now, unchained from the mansion, from the chief, from Lucas. But freedom tasted like ashes. She whispered to herself, I destroyed a family. I avenged my father. Yet why does it feel like I burned myself too? As the bus pulled away, she didn't look back. Inside the crumbling mansion, Lucas sat in silence, broken not by his father's fall, but by the betrayal of the only woman who had made him feel alive again. And so the tale ended. Not with love, not with forgiveness, but with two souls marked forever. One carried vengeance. The other carried loss. Both carried scars.